Here's today's devotional. The series we're on is emotional overload. And today's topic is when everything feels like too much at once. So nothing feels impossible by itself. That's what makes it so confusing. The pressure isn't coming from one overwhelming crisis, it's coming from 10 smaller things arriving at the same time. A responsibility you haven't finished, or maybe a conversation you're avoiding, a decision that still needs to be made, or maybe a concern sitting quietly in the background, or a future uncertainty you keep revisiting. So, individually, each one of these actually seem manageable, but together they create weight that's difficult to explain. You wake up and you're already mentally busy, and before your feet even hit the floor, your mind starts sorting through unfinished thoughts. You aren't necessarily panicking, you just feel crowded, internally crowded. Every thought competing for attention, every concern requesting top priority, and eventually, even small, simple tasks begin to feel heavier than they should. Maybe you've experienced this moment while sitting in your vehicle after work before going inside. Nothing dramatic happened during the day, yet the idea of handling one more thing just feels exhausting. You sit there a little longer, not because you're lazy, because you're full. You're emotionally full, you're mentally full, you're spiritually full. And when capacity becomes limited, even ordinary demands can begin to feel overwhelming. There's two parts of scripture I want to read from. First one's in Psalms and second one's in Matthew's. And Psalms 61 verse 2 reads, I call to you from the ends of the earth when my heart is without strength. Lead me to the rock that is high above me. It captures the feeling of reaching an internal limit. The passage begins from a place of weakness rather than control, full control. Not because weakness is desirable, but because honesty creates room for help. The passage acknowledges that there are more moments when emotional strength feels insufficient for everything being carried. And instead of hiding that reality, it brings it into the open. There's something deeply freeing about all that. And then the second passage is Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. And it reads, Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It speaks directly into the experience of burden. The passage doesn't target people who have everything organized. It addresses people who feel weighed down, people carrying more than they were meant to carry alone. The invitation is not towards greater striving, it's towards rest, towards release, towards different ways of carrying what feels heavy. One of the dangers of emotional overload is that it convinces us of every problem deserves equal attention right now. Everything feels urgent, everything feels unfinished, everything feels like it must be solved immediately. But the urgency often creates more pressure. Not every concern requires your attention today. Not every uncertainty needs resolution tonight. Not every responsibility belongs in your hands at the exact same moment. Sometimes the healthiest step is not moving faster. It's slowing down enough to recognize what you're actually carrying. If everything feels like too much right now, start here. Acknowledge the weight honestly. Acknowledge the fatigue honestly. You don't need to pretend your capacity is unlimited. You don't need to convince yourself you're handling it perfectly. You can simply recognize that you are human. And perhaps today, faith looks less like solving everything and more like trusting God with the things you cannot carry all at once. One concern at a time, one decision at a time, one faithful step at a time. Because sometimes peace begins when we stop demanding that our minds can hold everything simultaneously. I hope this one helps.